Hello, folks. Okay, then. So this is the first lesson on Russian government, and as I said in the previous one, what we're going to look at this week is ideology. So you should have the booklet in front of you, and as you can see, the first bit has got what I talked about in the previous video. I said how to do 25-mark questions, and then it has Tsars autocracy, okay, with some arrows. So first of all, to be clear, what does ideology actually mean? Well, in a very simple form, ideology means ideas. And I suppose the main area regarding this topic is, did the way which the Tsars and the communists, were their ideas about running the country the same or different? Did the centre of their beliefs differ? So obviously you've got the communists who kind of got their ideas from Karl Marx and rejected things like God and stuff like that, whereas the Tsars had a very different set of ideas. You know, they believed that their powers came from God, etc., etc. However, in reality, the way in which both the communists and the Tsars actually ran the country and their ideas of running the country were quite similar, i.e., they kind of saw it being run by a small elite in Moscow or in St. Petersburg, depending on when it was Tsars or communists. They kind of had similar ideas about how to deal with opposition and things like that. So, in some ways, their ideas were quite different. You know, this workers' revolution, Karl Marx, blah 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 blah. But in reality, both systems kind of ran the country in a fairly similar kind of way. Hence, why we said for these sorts of questions, I would suggest there was very little change in the nature of governments on the Tsars and on the communists. So ideology then means ideas, and as you should already know from when we did the initial work on Russia, which Danny did with you as well, you should already know what is meant by autocracy. Now, if you can't remember or whatever, don't worry about it. Because what I want you to do is there's some reading I like to do, and there's also a PowerPoint on Moodle which Liz has done called Russian Ideology, I think it's called. It's the very top one anyway. What we're going to do today is use bits of that. We've got some reading to do as well, and we're going to hop between kind of the two or three as the way for doing this. So what I plan to go over with today, and I want this doing really for Thursday or Friday, is the bit about the Tsars and autocracy and their ideology, in particular looking at Alex II and Alex III. There's some stuff on Nicholas II as well. And then on Friday, my idea was, or Thursday, whatever day I do in the next video, will be to look a bit more into Nicholas II and some of the changes he perhaps made, and then look a little bit at the provisional government, and then say will be some work to do over the weekend on like Lenin and the ideology of the communists, essentially. And then next week we can then finish off doing the communists, and then have a session discussing what ways were the similar, what ways were the different. If you're writing a paragraph on this, what would it look like? Okay, so that's the kind of the rough plan. So what I like to do, it's on Moodle. It's called Access to History. I actually wrote down the exact title, which I now can't remember. Let me just put it on the system. If you look on Moodle, it's called Access to History of Russia and its Rulers. So you've got ideology at the top. You've got the Nature of Russian Ideology PowerPoint, which is the Liz one, which I mentioned. It's 1, 2, it's 3 or 4 down. Access to History of Russia and its Rulers. Okay, what Liz has done, she scanned in pages 12 to 15. I know the booklet says page 16, but it's only 12 to 15 you need. What I'd like to do is complete that little diagram. What are the 4 kind of pillars, if you like, of autocracy? So things like the Orthodox Church, for example. Perhaps to remind yourself, to explain them slightly. Then a separate piece of paper, you need to take some notes on these 4 bullet points. Okay, sum up the nature of autocracy in 1855. How did Alex II, Alex III, and Nicholas II reinforce autocracy? So how did they ensure that it continued? How did the implementation of autocracy perhaps change between these Tsars, if they did? And then I can never say this guy's name. How did Pobodonostiev, I call him Mr. Pob, okay? How did Mr. Pob believe. So, what did Mr. Pod believe, and how did he contribute to the continuation of autocracy? Now, for that particular bullet point, if you look at Lizzie's PowerPoint on slides, so I wrote them down somewhere. It says slides 4 to 5, I think it is. Okay, she's got a couple of she's got a fair bit of detail on Mr. Pob and his kind of beliefs. So you might want to use that for doing bullet point 4. He's quite an important figure who you need to know. It's worth trying to memorize how to spell his name as well in an exam. If in an exam you get midway through and you run out of steam how to do it, just do a bit of a squiggle. So I would like to do that. So you're doing the diagram, those 4 bullet points on a piece of paper using Lizzie's PowerPoint slide for the 4th bullet point. Then what I'd like to do is on Lizzie's slides, there's a slide. Normally we do this in class with you all and kind of discuss it. There's a slide called Match the Policy to the Tsar, and you've got a picture of Alex II, a picture of Alex III, and a picture of Nicholas II, and you've got land captains, land bank, Okhrana, emancipation of the serfs, fundamental laws, Duma, Russification, October Manifesto, etc., etc. This is kind of designed to do in front of the class. You all have to say which one matches which Tsar. So what I like to do, I suggest you do on a piece of paper, you do like a table with Alex II, Alex III, Nicholas II on, okay, and then write on, so for example, emancipation of the serfs, you should know, okay, so write that under Alex II, and then perhaps in a different colour, just write a line or two to say what it is and how that affected autocracy. Okay, then do land bank, which of the Tsars introduced that, like a sentence or two to explain what the land bank was and how it affected autocracy, etc., etc. Okay, when you've done that, because I am really horrible, as you know, an important part of an important part of autocracy was something called Russification. And again, Lizzie's PowerPoint slides, I've got this on the next couple of pages after Mr. Pob. It says Russification, the picture of Alexander III. Okay, what it was, basically, is about trying to make all of Russia, Russia, if that makes sense. So because the empire had grown so big, they gained other kind of countries within their empire, things like the Kazakhstanis and I don't know, the Ukrainians and the Poles and all various other groups. And what Russification was, it was a policy designed to wipe out the cultures of the other nationalities to make them all into good Russians. So, for example, so you think about Britain, for example. So, like if the English tried to, we took in the Scots, didn't we? If we had Russification, we'd then ban the Welsh language in Wales and make them all speak English, and we'd ban the Scots from having bagpipes and haggis and stuff, and make them all kind of middle class Southern English people. So, it's policy which the Russians had was to try. Because so much of the country was made up of people who weren't Russians, who weren't with the Orthodox Church, who weren't various other Russian culture, they tried to stamp out things and reinforce Russia. So things like banning like the Ukrainian language, when they'd had the issue with the Pole uprising in 1860s, they tried to make life difficult for the Catholic Church and promote the Russian Orthodox Church, things of that nature. And this policy is called Russification. Okay, Alexander II did it. Okay, Alexander III and Nicholas, and actually the communist regimes did it as well. So Stalin had Russification, and for those of you who might know about this, you could argue that when they imposed communism into like Hungary and Poland and all these other countries, again they tried to promote their ideology, i.e., communism, on these other nations. They tried to get rid of like the Catholic Church in Poland and all this kind of stuff, which again is Russification in the communist period. Anyway, what we're going to do is using Lizzie's PowerPoint. She's got like 3 or 4 slides on this. Just take down some notes about what is Russification and how that enforced autocracy. When you've done that, I'm aware there's a fair bit here. This is the last bit. You'll notice it's like a big summary ideology table on the Tsars. It's called Ideology Tsars. It says resources, notes from previous tasks on autocracy. So using everything which you've just done, so the diagram, the note taken from those 4 bullet points, the extra bits and bobs from Mr. Pob, the notes you've taken about Russification from Lizzie's PowerPoint, putting those policies under the right Tsars, etc., etc. Once you know all of that, okay, we're then to summarise each of these Tsars. So you've got Alexander II, summarise his ideology towards autocracy, okay, write down any evidence of changes which he made to autocracy, any evidence of continuity, so how he continued his daddy's policies, I suppose, on autocracy. You then got Alex III, again, which do the same thing, summarise his kind of role with autocracy. Mr. Pob will probably pop up in here, I suspect. Any changes he made from Alexander II regarding autocracy. And you might want to think about, well, the changes which he made, did it make it more conservative or more liberal? And any evidence of continuity. And then the same for Nicholas II as well. And then the very final bit is at the bottom, conclusion, how far did autocracy change 1855 to 1917? And what we'll do on Thursday is we'll have a little chat about that, make sure we're all happy with these areas, and then, as I said, we'll do a little bit more work on Nicholas II. Was he a weak or strong autocrat? We'll do this final bit at the bottom here about the PG, and did they promise a new ideology? Okay, any problems on any of that, send me an email and I'll ignore it. No, I'll respond to it and help you out. Okay.